Look at the 15s to 20s. Circulatory system and the respiratory system is matured or is maturing. So therefore aerobic and anaerobic systems are trained, and more energy specific system training can be done at that age. Once again, you still need to be careful with the maturation on the chronological age, because there's still going to be some big variations in the physical stature of our guys in these age groups. Big. So individualisation may still need to be important. The muscular system stabilises, height and weight increases start to stabilise, the muscles are matured in size, strength training can be developed, and we can start to work across that 5-year period towards maximum strength. And we'll talk more about specific strength training shortly. This is just a general overview. The skeletal system continues to mature, connective tissue is strengthening, and gradual overload is critical. So once again, the common theme is we need to be careful with volumes, particularly with these guys, because they're still maturing. Common sense. Let's not make it too complicated. So, a periodised plan. This is not all encompassing. This is to give you an idea of thinking about how we're going to do it. So what we're looking at here is the idea that mobility and stability and functional movements are the cornerstone, the foundation, the bricks on which the building is going to be built, if you like. That's the base. We need to work on those things repetitively, not in massive volumes, but that should be done frequently in our sessions, generally as part of our warm-up, for example, as opposed to doing, and I like to think we're not all now doing 1 or 2 laps around the oval and then static stretching for 15, 20 minutes and then you're into the session. I like to think that we're probably doing some sort of ball in hand, increased core temperature, into functional movements, mobility, range of motion, then gradually increase the speed and boom, we're into the session. Starts of sessions are a great opportunity to work on mobility and stability even with younger guys, and we even do the same thing at a senior level with elite athletes. Progressing across to strength, power, speed, and then repeatability in the aerobic component of being able to do it over and over again. Remember I said earlier at the start of the talk, aerobic work, yes, it is important. Having aerobic capacity is really important in our game, but it's the ability to do high intensity efforts over and over and over and over again, and hopefully for gradually longer and longer and longer. That's the key for us as coaches or strength conditioning specialists with our sport, is to have our athletes have the capacity to do those intense efforts over and over again. I'm not saying you do the mobility as a young child and then you've got that, so you leave it and then you go to the next part, you do that part and you leave it and you go to the next. All components is what I call, I'm a big fan of what's called an integrated model, doing all components all the time. It's just the volumes and intensities of each that will vary. So obviously a younger athlete coming in, a 10 or 14-year-old, whatever it may be, we're going to spend some more time on mobility and stability and trying to get them functionally right, and then gradually adding on top of that foundation the necessary requirements to make a functional athletic footballer for the coaches, you guys, to be able to polish with the technical and tactical aspects. We just want to try and get them right for you guys to do your job, for the coaches that are in here. So here's a little bit of a plan as well. We're obviously also considering, and this was sort of some of the things we looked at the nights, being core principles. We're not just obviously working on the physical development. We want to think of the holistic approach of our younger athletes. So we're considering football skills, game sense, and really importantly, the personal development as well. So it's not just developing the physical aspects. We're trying to consider the whole physical, social, psychological, emotional, if you like, with our athletes. All pretty straightforward. I'm sure we're all considering these sorts of things in the development of our athletes. So, the plan, and this is once again just an idea for you guys. We found on the integrator varying. So, the idea being, if we look at each column separately, the speed and agility to begin with, and as I say, Paul will be dealing more specifically with speed development later, so I don't need to spend a hell of a lot of time on this. But needless to say, the foundation of which is the speed mechanics. Okay, so the speed mechanics being the foundation, and once again, I see too many coaches creating a little bit of paralysis by analysis, if you like, by giving 20,000 technical cues for their athletes. And unlike robots, we all know how to run, we all know how to walk. Running is just an extension of walking faster. So my belief is, as we get these guys functionally better and their mobility improves and we strengthen the necessary areas, being the posterior chain, glutes, hamstrings, core, they move better anyway. So why try and do 1,000 drills when they don't have the strength, they don't have the mobility, they don't have the functionality to get into the correct position anyway. I'm not saying drills aren't important, but I love the KISS principle. Keep it bloody simple and work on the areas that are going to have the biggest impact. What are the 20% of the things that we need to work on to have impact on the other 80? Mobility, stability, functional strength are really important, particularly for these young guys. So yes, I'm not, or should I say no, I'm not saying don't do drills, but keep them really simple. You don't have to go to an athletics textbook and copy the 20,000 sprint drills that sprint coaches will give their track athletes. Keep it simple. Some really basic mechanics, and if at the same time you're working on mobility and stability and the other things away from training, over time you sit back and go, geez, he's starting to move better, this bloke, because he's developing, he's strengthening the weak areas and he's lengthening the tight ones, or she, if you're working with females as well. So keep it simple is my real strong advice to you guys. It's funny, the other thing I've seen with real good coaches that I've been able to work with or I spend time with, they're all pretty much the same. They do exactly that. They keep things simple. They don't try and bombard you with 20,000 pieces of information and use really complex technical information. Keep it really simple and do the basic things really well, because if you get those basic things right, the 20% rule, the other 80% follow. Any thoughts? So, speed mechanics through stability and control, and we'll talk about the other part a little bit. Then into more general speed and agility, and as I say, Paul will probably broaden this, and I'll give you some examples of it later anyway. Moving more into speed, specific speed and agility. Our game, if we're talking purely agility, is about reactive, and it's chaotic, if you like. It's not about having, now I'm not saying it's not important, in a general prep phase we've all done markers where you're going out around a point, you're developing the agility principles that are going to be broadened on later when you get to the specific part, because true agility in our game is you're coming at me, I don't know where you're going. It's reactive. That's where we need to get to. And all we do with experienced athletes compared to a younger athlete, I'd spend more time working on the general principles and getting their movement patterns right in a simple format, and then gradually moving to more specific drills. Whereas an elite athlete, we might spend the first 2 or 3 weeks only doing agility drills, and then we're moving on to the specific work, because they've done that over years and years. Our goal is to eventually spend more time here in the specific. But we need to start somewhere. So start with simple mechanics, simple movements, at the same time working on mobility and stability and strengthening the appropriate musculature, and eventually we're spending more and more time here. Now this is the same model that I'd follow with an NRL squad, but we spend a lot less time on the base levels, because you'd like to think at that point in time they've probably got a fair foundation laid. We need to spend more time down in the nuts and bolts area. Same with strength. Control and stability, general strength development, working to more specific power, and then once again that repeatability, being able to do it over and over and over again becomes really important, and I'll talk more about this last part later. Now this is just a guide. I'm not saying this is the exact way you need to be doing it, and if you're not doing it, you don't know what you're doing. Just give you a guide and give you something to think about.